Kia ora te whānau and welcome back to another YouTube video. Have you ever wondered... One moment. That's better. As I was saying, have you ever wondered why your muscles start to burn when you perform certain cardio movements or cardio exercise sessions? Today we're going to explore why that happens and how we can get better at it. What are the different training applications that we can get from having a better understanding of this thing? So the first thing that we need to do before we can understand how to train better for this is to understand what is happening to our body. So first of all, let's run over the different things that our body needs to do whenever we are going to be attempting these different training sessions. First, what we're going to look at are the different energy systems. Why is this important? Because there are actually different energy systems that are responsible or determined by the different activities that we do. So we have three main energy systems, and they are determined by our intensity and also the duration of time. So if we just take a look at the actual definitions of each energy system, then we can have a better understanding of what they actually do. This system provides immediate energy by breaking down phosphocreatine, which is stored in the muscle, to quickly regenerate ATP, the body's primary energy carrier. It's used for short, high-intensity activities like sprinting or weightlifting. The key features are it's very fast but limited in duration due to low stores of phosphocreatine. So with this energy system, you can improve those stores by taking a creatine supplement. But obviously, you're not going to be able to get very much out of it in terms of longer duration, maybe better efficiency and a little longer in duration, but not a lot. Still, it's very helpful if you do take a creatine supplement to try and improve this one. Our second energy system, the anaerobic glycolysis, glucose, glycogen, you're seeing the trend. So basically this one utilizes stores from carbohydrates. How it works is this system breaks down glucose into what's called pyruvate to generate ATP without using oxygen. When oxygen is not available, pyruvate is converted to lactate, which can accumulate and cause muscle fatigue. This is the one we're going to be talking about today. It's used in activities that require high intensity but can't be sustained for very long, 400-meter sprints or intense weightlifting. So kind of like your Metcon stuff for periods of time. It produces ATP quickly, but also leads to lactic acid buildup and fatigue. The other energy system is our aerobic system or our oxidative system. This is the one we will utilize for low intensity efforts. So the primary fuel source is carbohydrates, fats, and sometimes proteins. How it works is the oxidative system generates ATP through the process of aerobic respiration, which requires oxygen. It occurs in the mitochondria cells, can use carbohydrates or fats as fuel. The system is slower than the other two, but can sustain energy production for longer periods of time, making it important for endurance activities like running, swimming, or cycling. Now you might be asking yourself, why is it important to understand the different energy systems? Well, the main importance is because it will determine how you train. If you're not training with enough intensity, then you won't be creating the correct stimulus to produce the right adaptation in your body for you to adapt to the different things that we do. You need a mixture of aerobic endurance and power endurance to be able to attempt and achieve the different things we set out to do in our trainings, and also if you're in a competition setting. So the next thing we're going to speak about and look at is what's called lactate threshold. And this surrounds the idea of the second and the third energy systems and how you kind of flick between the two of them. So if we go back to the first question of why are my muscles starting to burn during my training session, this will provide a little bit more clarity around what's happening to your body and how we can improve it. Let's look at the pure definition for lactate threshold, and then I'll explain to you why it's important. So lactate threshold, also known as anaerobic threshold, refers to exercise intensity at which lactate, a byproduct of anaerobic metabolism, begins to accumulate in the bloodstream at a faster rate than it can be cleared away. In simpler terms, it's the point during exercise where the body shifts from predominantly using aerobic energy systems, which don't produce lactate, like we said before, to relying more on anaerobic energy systems. Some key points about lactate threshold include lactate production and clearance. So kind of what we talked about before, when you start to increase your intensity for a prolonged period of time, you will start to accumulate more lactate in your blood, and then eventually you'll get to that point where you're unable to clear it as well because your intensity is too high and you're producing more and more, and it just can't be cleared as fast. Why does it matter? Well, one of the important things is it's a performance indicator. The lactate threshold is considered one of the best predictors of endurance performance. Athletes with a higher lactate threshold, the ability to keep higher intensity for longer, can sustain those higher intensities for longer periods of time without fatiguing. So most of the time when they test this type of thing, they will do it in laboratory. And what you do is you sit on a bike, you do a bike session at a certain intensity for a certain period of time, maybe like 30 minutes or so. And during that time, they will take notes on your heart rate, your rate of perceived exertion, how tired you're feeling at certain points in time, and then also they will take readings of your blood lactate. What they do most of the time is they prick your finger, and then they take a small drop of blood and then they test to see how much lactate is in your blood. And obviously at certain points in time the blood lactate starts to increase, and when this happens we are able to mark the beginning of our blood lactate threshold and then see when it starts to go up into, I guess, what would be considered an uncomfortable range. And then we can kind of draw our graph from there. Not everybody has access to a laboratory to perform this type of procedure. But what you could do is we could utilize different intensities. So if you use the bike, we could measure the power output on the bike using speed or wattage, RPMs, something like that. And then we could also measure what your heart rate does. And we could also measure your rate of perceived exertion as well. And we could kind of draw a similar graph. Cool, Kaz, but I'm just training here at TCT. Why is this relevant to me? Why do I need to know this if I'm doing the classes? Great question. If you haven't noticed already, we don't just do one thing all the time. Sometimes we'll be doing interval trainings, sometimes we'll be doing mechons, sometimes I have programmed aerobic training sessions, or maybe just an aerobic interval. So that's why it's really important to understand the different energy systems that are working, so you're not just always working at the same intensity. Of course, as I go through the coaching sessions, I will try and provide some information, but sometimes you can get a little bit lost with regards to what we are doing, and then when I say how you should be doing it. So hopefully this will shed a little bit more light on the topic that is your blood lactate threshold and how it is affected. But before we do finish up, here's a few other things that affect your blood lactate threshold. The first one is fairly obvious. It's fitness level. If you're a fitter person, if you're an athlete, then you fall into this category. Obviously your blood lactate threshold is going to be better than someone who isn't fit. The next is exercise intensity. When we think about exercise intensity, we're talking about how hard you train. So if you're training a lot harder than someone else, you're probably going to improve your blood lactate threshold a lot more than what they would. Another not so obvious one is muscle fiber type. How do we even determine this? Well, a really easy way is to just have a look on your lifespan of athletic activity and think to yourself, am I really explosive? If you were quite fast or could jump quite high, naturally, most of the time you'd have more fast twitch muscle fibers. If you aren't, then you probably have more slow twitch muscle fibers. It has shown that if you have more fast twitch muscle fibers, you actually accumulate lactate faster than someone who doesn't. Nutrition also falls under this hat. If you are someone that has more carbohydrate availability, then it's a lot easier for you to delay the onset of blood lactate, and obviously you will accumulate less when you're doing higher intensities, so you don't feel that burn as soon. Also, something that falls underneath being fitter is improved blood flow. If you are a fitter person, if you have a healthy heart, then usually your blood flow is pretty good. And if we have good blood flow, then it usually transfers or carries over to someone who has a greater blood lactate threshold. Our final area that's probably most relevant is aging. As you get older, your blood lactate threshold begins to decline, as does your muscles, and this is usually because you're just less active, or most people are. So if you can become more active, or at least stay more active, then it's less likely that you will lose your blood lactate threshold, and it's less likely that you will lose a lot of your muscle mass. Make sure you stay on that bike and keep doing those weights. Team, I hope you have enjoyed today's video, and I hope it has provided a little bit more clarity when it comes to the way that you train, the different energy systems that you use, and what this whole blood lactate threshold is. Thank you as well to those of you who have asked about this in the past. What we really want to do from this point is we want to make sure that we train with certain intensities for all the different sessions that we are involved in, understanding the intensity that we should be working at so we can improve in these different areas. Things like your nutrition, your age, being more active, just being a generally healthy person are all going to play and contribute towards how well we can perform in the gym. But it's really important that we know exactly what we should be doing in every single one of our training sessions. If you made it this far into the video, please drop a young sword down into the comments below. We really appreciate all your support. And don't forget, next year we're moving to a new gym and it's gonna be lit. Stay tuned, team. Let's go.